Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is Shane Brown, the Chief Executive Officer of NurseIO. They are an app-based technology platform that connects healthcare professionals with facilities seeking per diem staff. With a strong focus on freedom and flexibility, they empower nurses, CNAs, and other care providers to quickly locate shifts, pick convenient schedules, and earn income on their terms. Shane has extensive experience in medical device commercialization, having held leadership roles at Abbott Laboratories and St. Jude Medical. Over the years, he has steered multiple organizations through mergers and acquisitions and helped drive rapid revenue growth, even contributing to the IPOs of leading medical device companies. Known as a servant leader, Shane is passionate about creating innovative staffing solutions that empower healthcare workers and ensure patient care is never compromised. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. One recent client was able to add over $900 per employee per year in extra cash flow by implementing one of our innovative programs. The results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. You want to find out if your company qualifies? Contact us today at addbackbenefits.com. All right, back to our guest today, the CEO of NurseIO, Shane Brown. Thanks for making the time to share your story today.
Yeah, glad to be here, Anthony.
So, Shane, before we talk about NurseIO, how that came to be, how your opportunity to join the team came about, I want to understand a bit about your track record in medical device companies. You've had several notable roles: sales, business development, executive leadership at a number of medical device companies, including some that would go on to be acquired or go public. Is there a particular lesson from some of those high stakes moments of building these companies to significant scale that continues to influence how you operate in business today?
Yeah, good question. I think the coming off the college campus, it was a time when software was a big thing, and people were jumping into software. People were jumping into kind of business to business sales, all sorts of different things. What initially attracted me to healthcare broadly and medical device more narrowly was that hopefully you could do a little bit of good along the way. It wasn't just going to be a paycheck. And I think that compass has served me well over the years. Like the medical device industry, the healthcare industry, the healthcare IT industry, digital health industry, they're all really bare knuckle fighting industries. There's a lot of good competitors. There's amazing technologies. But that kind of North Star has helped me stay focused on just trying to provide some good, whether that's an innovative device or an interesting algorithm or something that's going to help your neighbor or my mother or our children to be able to run a little bit better or to breathe a little bit better or to have less burden from a cancerous tumor. All that stuff has driven me. So even as I thankfully worked my way up the quote unquote ladder, I knew somebody in the organization was tableside or bedside with a patient. And that's always meant a lot to me. So with a lot of flights over the years, with a lot of frustration and exhilaration and exhaustion and everything else, it's always made me feel pretty good when I fall asleep that I'm part of something a lot bigger than myself.
That's really cool. Obviously, all of us, we want to do well in our jobs. There's incentives, especially in the roles that you've had, to grow the company, to make money. Sometimes you're just hitting your head against the wall, and it's got to feel really good when you know that, hey, there's a bigger picture here of helping people, saving lives, making them healthier, right?
There is. And I, a mentor of mine was pretty profound with advice last year, kind of mid last year, kind of spring last year. I left a chapter of a company that was doing really and continues to do really, really strong, innovative work for patients that are suffering from brain tumors. For various reasons. The company was getting pretty complicated. The venture capital board was, very involved, et cetera, et cetera. But I ended up leaving that company, and the advice that I was given, which was really, really, really perceptive, was put together your 4 or 5 non-negotiables in order for your next role. And at the time, I thought it was, kind of a little bit of a hokey, every Wall Street Journal article will tell you to do the same thing. Harvard Business Reviews will tell you to do the same thing. Anybody in your neighborhood will tell you to do the same thing. Like, really think, be deliberate about your next step. But I actually was, after, I put my skepticism aside. I think I have the card right here somewhere, but I sat and for an afternoon, I thought about it. I prayed about it. I thought about it some more. I, walked through, I force ranked 1 through 5 of what I wanted in the next role that I was going to jump into, knowing that I dedicated a lot of myself to the roles that I'm in. And financial compensation was number 5.
Interesting.
And it was the scope of the responsibility, that it's a really fulfilling and needed solution, that it was, people that I wanted to work with and for, and, in the same sandbox, so to speak. And that we were providing something real, and location was important at this stage of life with 3 kids, that I didn't want to be gone 45 weeks out of the year anymore. I wanted to actually live where I slept on the weekends, and I wanted to be part of the day-to-day family. So all these worlds came together, and compensation was number 5 to that. And that doesn't mean that I'm a saint, and that doesn't mean I don't like, to vacation well with my family and to live well and all those things. But in terms of the opportunity that I wanted to jump into and how I want to spend the rest of my life, compensation's part of the puzzle. It's definitely not my driving force.
Interesting. Okay, so how did the door open up for this opportunity at NurseIO?
That's a good story too. So I've had a friend up here in North Scottsdale for a while, just a nice man that we kind of knew similar circles, kind of church circles, so to speak. And he and I would have coffee once or twice a year for several years. And he started talking about this company, NurseIO. And this was several months ago. This was more than a year ago. And he was talking about this company, and he's the board chair of this company. And he's on, kind of the autumn of his career and more board seats than operational roles. And he started talking about it. And because he was talking, like, I obviously paid attention and I thought about it and everything else. He never offered me the job. He, was just talking about how cool the opportunity will be when the company's ready to bring in a healthcare CEO. And so we kept on, every couple of months we'd get together for coffee and just talk about everything under the sun, including NurseIO. So this got into kind of Thanksgiving timeframe last year, late November, early December. And he said, hey, this company's gone through the med tech accelerator from the Mayo Clinic and Arizona State University. And they now are absolutely recommending, because of the growth trajectory, because of the need to raise some money, because of a launch into the big hospital markets across the country, that they need a healthcare CEO. And the founders are willing to step back in a humble way and bring in a true healthcare CEO. And so then I started thinking about this. I was like, okay, I can, in that
they're getting serious. You could tell, like
you could tell that it was no longer, it wasn't the board chair just frivolously kind of looking around the marketplace and still trying to sell internally why all these things were important. It was the validation from a legit accelerator of people that know how to launch small companies and scale. It was a board chair who has 50 years of experience in healthcare. It was a meeting with the 2 founders, who were both real people. They were best friends from rural New Mexico in high school that had made their way to the Phoenix area independently and were really entrepreneurial. And they found this distressed asset in nurse staffing that was kind of brick and mortar, calling around and saying, hey, we have 4 nurses in our lobby. Do you need a nurse today in your facility? And they were savvy enough to fund the company by themselves. They didn't take in any outside capital, truly bootstrapped to several $1 million of revenue. They brought in a fantastic CTO who digitized everything, who was very forward thinking about an app, about AI, about development in AI, about, credentialing, all sorts of different things. And this company got to a really good place during COVID because everybody was looking for staff to go to a nursing home or a detox center or whatever else. So long story short, when you combined, it was a Phoenix area company based in Scottsdale, close to my home. It was AI and forward thinking. It's going to be a great learning experience for me. It was people that I wanted to work with and wanted to work for, both by the board chairman and the two founders who, control the board. All these things came together, and it went back to my North Star of how can we help that patient on the table with a really good clinician? And I could just, for now at least, forget about the widget that was going to help that clinician, help the patient, and just try to consume myself with getting the right clinicians at the bedside to help that patient on the table.
This just checked all your boxes, right place, right time.
Yep.
The 4 things that came before that number 5 compensation on that list of non-negotiables.
Right.
And so, okay, so tell us, and we kind of touched on it in the intro, but I want to hear like in more detail from you. What is NurseIO doing that's different from sort of more traditional medical staffing firms?
So the traditional NurseIO business has been a double-sided marketplace. So if you picture a healthcare facility, there's enormous nursing shortages all over the country. Almost every single facility you can think of, from a assisted living center to a nursing home to a hospital to a surgery center.
Give us an idea. How many openings are we talking about at any given time?
Depending on the data source, between 500,000 and 1 million openings in the United States today.
Today, not like
today.
Like there's 10,000 this week and 10,000 next week. Like in this given moment, you're somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million openings.
It's one of the biggest problems in the healthcare today. You have a lot of, some of them are systemic, some of them are COVID related. So systemic, our population is getting older, right? And unfortunately more unhealthy. And then when you talk about detox and behavioral health, mental health has never been, where it is today. It keeps on growing. People struggling with addiction has never been higher, and it continues to grow. Clinicians are getting older and they are retiring. A lot of people, up to 15% of nurses, exited the full-time workforce during COVID because it was not fulfilling work, or they didn't agree with, the vaccination mandates, or they, just wanted to do something else with their life. Everybody, a lot of people, all of us, I certainly did, got introspective with, what do I want my career to look like? I've had a chance to get off the road for a couple months or, a year or whatever. Now, what does the next chapter hold? So a lot of clinicians retired. The need has never been bigger, and it continues to get more. There's not enough nursing schools that, so systemically, there's not enough supply of nurses coming in. And a lot of people just wanted more control and empowerment of their career. They don't want to ask somebody for paid time off. They want to be able to just say, hey, yeah, I'm Phoenix is very hot in the summer, right? So somebody may just make the decision, I'm going to leave for 3 months and I'm going to travel all over the national parks or the baseball stadiums in the United States or whatever. And then I want to work more in September to Christmas time to make up for the months that I was gone. And people want that control. Your parents are aging, or you want to coach your son's baseball team or your daughter's soccer team or whatever. People want more control and they want more empowerment. And that's what I think we do really well.
Say more about that. How are you giving them more control and more empowerment? Are they just sort of picking like, hey, I want to work one shift today, and I don't know, I'll figure out tomorrow when tomorrow comes?
Yeah, so you picture somebody opening up an app, and it's not Uber Eats and it's not Lyft or Waymo. Instead of picking, a pasta that they want delivered, or a cheesesteak that they want delivered, or that they want to go, to a friend's house and not worry about parking, so they're going to take an Uber. We're putting everything in people's hands. So a facility will post a shift on our app, and that shift will have pictures of the facility. It will enter exact rates that people will get paid once they fulfill the shift. It will, some places are, hey, if you work a whole day on Saturday, we are going to offer you a shift lunch or free parking or free bus fare or whatever. So people are seeing exactly what it is. They're saying, okay, this is at a detox center and I'm going to work there 2 hours or 6 hours on Saturday and 4 hours on Sunday morning. And this is rated well by other clinicians. It's a place that helps get, people up to speed that are clinicians. It's welcoming, it's accepting,
there's like
safe.
reviews like you would see like on an Uber or something.
Yep.
Okay.
So we have two-way reviews. And so people are with open eyes are able to say, wow, that facility, that's number one, it's 15 miles from my house. I only want to go 5 miles from a range from my house, or it's assisted living. And I only really want to do hospital work from here on out. And so they're getting a tremendous amount of details, and you can kind of trial run things too, right? So if you've been in a rigid hospital environment your whole career, and you want to take a step back, or you want to moonlight and make a little bit extra money because life is obviously expensive now, you could say, you know what? I've been in hospitals my whole career. I want to try a shift or 2 or 3 weekends in behavioral health or detox or school nursing or whatever. And so it's letting people chart their own path via our app rather than just going and working for, hospital Y in their community and being subject to all the good, bad, and other things that go with one job for 40 or 50 hours over 25 years.
Is it cumbersome then for them to get paid? Like, are they having to, wait for a check to come from that hospital or that detox center? Or how do you guys sort of facilitate that?
Yeah, we were the first in the marketplace, and I think it's because we listen really well. I think a lot of companies can design interesting technology and can market themselves really well. I think we do a really good job of listening. And so if you put yourself in the shoes of a single dad or a single mom or, somebody who's trying to make a little bit of money to pay some bills, we decided to go to same day pay in a very transparent way. And so if I finish my shift at the hospital or the surgery center or the nursing home at 6 p.m., by 8 p.m., I'm going to get paid by our app, and then we go and collect from the facility.
So you're floating that money to your worker, your employee, your contractor.
We are
before you're getting paid by your customer.
Wow. Because we know how important that is. A CNA or a nursing assistant, they want to know not just what they're getting paid, they want to know exactly when they're going to get paid. And a couple weeks in the future doesn't feel real good when you're trying to bring groceries home or you're trying to figure out, the family budget for the next week or day or whatever. So that was really important to us. And we're able to do that. It's not necessarily the best thing for our business because, to your point, we have to float. And if we pay that same day, we don't invoice until the following Monday, and we may not collect for 15 days or 30 days or ever from somebody, but we think it's that important to be a good partner for these nurses. So they come back to our app rather than somebody else's marketplace and say, I work for NurseIO, and NurseIO empowers me to pick up shifts all over my neighborhood, and I'm going to get paid that same day.
You eliminate those headaches for the nurses having to try to collect or waiting on a more traditional paycheck, it might be a week or two from now. And you guys take on that risk and that hassle because you really want to take care of the nurses, those frontline workers.
We're in effect our own payday loan service without charging, 15% or some predatory rate. Like we're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Well, that's great. And types of facilities, I heard you mention detox, hospitals. Was there assisted care, so like senior living? What other kinds of facilities are your client base?
Yeah, our traditional business has been behavioral health centers, detox centers, rehabilitation centers, like physical rehab centers where people have to learn how to walk again or learn how to, use their hands again after a stroke or after a spinal, fusion or whatever. Skilled assistant living, nursing homes, we call it post-acute and subacute. That's been the bread and butter of the company. And we're on the verge of jumping into the hospital market with some really good indicators that we will be very well received in big hospital systems across the country. Also, ambulatory surgery centers are doing a lot of procedures, and they, if they miss a couple staff members on a day, they can't do as many procedures, and so the revenue suffers greatly. So it's basically anywhere nurses are, nursing assistants are, and then within that, everything that we can do to make sure a facility is well staffed.
Talk to me about the company's growth. Like, how many markets are you guys in? Let's just start there. How many markets are you in right now, Shane?
We're technically 90% of our business is in Arizona. We have toe in the water in 3 other states. And we know, because of both demographics and the need of hospitals, so you combine those two for the need. And then we also know the regulatory burden of different states. So if you want to go to California, it's an enormous demographic, but the regulatory environment is so high that doesn't make sense for a really small company that wants to grow to jump into that market next. We know that it's in our future. We know we want to provide great service for those clinicians in those facilities. But we've identified 10 more markets that we want to go into in the next 6 to 12 months that are both good demographically, that have nurses on NurseIO's app already, and will be a regulatory climate that we can succeed in.
Okay, so say that number again, 10 markets in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty big lift. I mean, one market alone, you've got the regulatory hurdles, you've got to find, a stable of nurses, you've got to have the client relationships there. You have to have sort of that supply demand balance to keep everybody happy. How do you sort of think about going into a new market?
Yeah, we try to stay as focused and as intelligent as we can, meaning the ambitious side of me, and probably the me from 15 years ago, would just say, okay, we know we have product market fit in this market. Now it's time to conquer the world. Let's go big. Let's go broad. Let's go deep. Let's boil the ocean. Let's go. The reality is we have less than 10 full-time employees.
Wow.
So we cast a shadow in the marketplace that's much bigger than our actual company. That's part being bootstrapped to, for several years, and no outside investors or no outside debt. But we also do things very efficiently, meaning we onboard clinicians very quickly. We credential clinicians very appropriately and very responsibly, but also quickly. We know, before we go into a marketplace, we know those facilities. We know the proximity to clinicians that want to work in the gig economy, that want to pick up shifts. So we have a lot of intelligence that is not like, my first sales job. I would fly into, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I would open up a Yellow Pages and I would look through, where the surgeons' offices were. And then I'd go visit those surgeon offices. We now have so much intel at our hands that whether it's a digital presence or a outreach from me or outreach from our sales and marketing team or our founders, we know where the needs should be from pattern recognition. And then our AI tools help us to stay really focused.
I'd like to hear more about what you're using AI for, because you mentioned about being able to onboard and credential very quickly. Is that one of the places that it comes into play?
It's one of them. So just to separate the two things, on the development side of our algorithm, of our software, of our product offering, more than 90% of our development is happening with AI. It's called Cursor AI, is what we use. And that helps us to, in real time, again, listen to the marketplace. And in real time, we can hear about something with a clinician or a facility, let's say Monday at noon. We can initiate those changes within our dev software, our AI dev software, and that can hit the marketplace that night. Our app would be totally different, or our software can be totally changed by that, whether that's, hey, we need to alert people in hours rather than minutes, whether that is the rating system, we want to make it easier for people to leave reviews, whether that is, hey, blue is more, eye-catching than red, whatever that is, we can listen quickly and then implement almost just as fast. And then credentialing and onboarding that you're talking about, we think we have a distinct competitive advantage. We don't have a team of 25 people checking TB tests and CPR certification and
Is that
licensure.
typical at other firms?
It's not. The big onboarding teams are typical at other firms. I'm not going to give away necessarily the secret sauce of how we do that, but we know that the way we do it is even more thorough and way faster.
Oh, come on. Pull back the curtain a little bit, Shane. No?
We have very good AI tools that we've developed that are proprietary for us that help us scan people's credentials. And then we're able to stand by those credentials, that they're accurate, they're not fraudulent, and a lot of people, if a lot of people are taking, a month to onboard credentials, we can do that in a fraction of the time.
Like a few days, a couple hours?
Most of the time we're within 24 hours.
Wow. That's impressive. I have to think that that's a bit, like, not only is it sort of saving you that labor cost of having somebody, like manually set aside to, review that, but it also gets your providers, your clinicians into the position to be placed at a client site much more quickly. It's going to keep them happy, right? So they come to your site, they don't want to wait a month before, they're ready to work today.
Right. Yeah. And especially you go back to that example of somebody who wants to get paid pretty quickly, whether they're moonlighting, their life's more expensive, or there's, an unforeseen expense that comes into their household budget, whatever else. You don't want to wait by the phone and then apply a bunch of places. You want to get to work as fast as you can.
Right.
After you decide, you want to get to work. And because if you get to work and then you work for somebody like us, then you're going to get paid right away. And that's different than hoping and praying for an opportunity weeks from now. They can get to going, the next day if they decide to do so.
So you mentioned 10 different markets that you got your eye on. Are you ready to mention any of them yet?
No, I'd prefer not to.
That's fair. Okay. So, wow, all kinds of places we could go with this. Let's talk about your mission. Freedom is our culture. Yeah. What's the meaning behind that statement? And say a little bit more about how it guides your approach to empowering both your clients, sort of the healthcare facilities, as well as the nursing professionals.
So there was a study, I'll start on the facility side. So many facilities were left shorthanded during the COVID spikes in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, that they had to sign up a lot of what are called travel nurses or locums or longer term contract people. And that's a good Band-Aid, right? You have somebody who is in Ohio and they pick up a contract in Alaska or California and they just go out there for 6 months and they work. So on the surface, that makes a lot of sense. In reality, those programs are drastically more expensive than full-time staff, like 50% more in a lot of ways. And so you and I are working the same shift. I'm a full-time employee. You're a traveler. You and I are doing the same job for the same time frame, and you're getting paid 50% more than I am. It's bad for morale. It's destroyed a lot of the budgets in hospitals. Almost over 40% of hospitals are underwater in terms of profitability. And most of that is because of labor spend. And most of that is because of the spikes of, the stopgaps that had to be put in, as the working field was changing. So that facility in that example, or those facilities, they now have the freedom of saying, hey, maybe we don't need to renew the contract for that really expensive resource that's doing the same job as everybody else. But maybe if we have in our back pocket a per diem app solution like we have, then if somebody goes out on PTO or maternity leave, or it calls in sick or has a sick child that they can't come in for their shift, we can press the easy button on the NurseIO app and get that shift filled with somebody who's aligned with our cost structure and our budget and is just as professional and has the same licenses and has the same education as somebody that we're paying 50% more. So that gives the staffing people, the chief operating officer or the chief nursing officer or the HR representative, that gives them freedom to do what's right for that ward in that facility for that shift. And on the clinician side of things, or the healthcare professional side of things, I now have the freedom to work where I want to, when I want to. It's not more complicated than that for us. We know people can say, I'm open to a 100-mile radius. I'm open to a 2-mile radius. I would prefer to stay towards a detox center or an assisted living center rather than, something totally different from that. And oh, by the way, I've been rated very highly from this facility, and I know that they like me. And so I'm going to put that as one of my favorites. So the second that a facility puts a shift out to the marketplace, I'm going to get notified by that. So whether I'm at my full-time job or I'm, working outside in the yard, I'm going to get a notification that, St. Mary's Hospital 2 miles away in the ICU needs someone. And I love working there. So that's the freedom I have to pick the place, to pick the rate, and to be prioritized as somebody that, has been rated very well from that facility.
Shane, when you guys go into a new healthcare facility, you want to bring them on as a new client, what's the biggest piece of pushback that you typically get, and how do you answer that?
Well, the bigger the facility is, or the bigger the organization is, the more stakeholders there are. And as we all do, it's human nature. We all have our pet projects, and we all take a thin slice of information. So if we're approaching somebody, they could be like, hey, we have a staffing agency. We have a contract through our GPO, or we have, we've been using this, brick and mortar staffing company across town for 35 years. When they truly understand what we're doing on the per diem side, let alone compared to the other per diem providers, even just take, because like right now, you could say our competition is solutions that are similar to what we do, not as good, not as fast, not as foolproof, not as easy, but there's still a lot of brick and mortar staffing companies that have people that they're paying every day, whether they're working or not, and they're paying benefits and they're doing a lot of different things. Our advantage is the analytic, because of AI, the analytics that we can pull from things, the rating systems, the same day pay, the transparency of our rates compared to the clinicians' rates. All of these things help everybody be really transparent and free to do what they need to do. And it differentiates us, frankly. There's theoretically a lot of people can jump up and fill a gap in staffing, whether that's full-time or traveler, long-term contract, or per diem. We just think that we do it the right way, and we do it very quickly.
What unique challenges, Shane, have you guys encountered while fusing healthcare specifically with this technology, two complex fields? How's your team overcome that in launching and evolving the product?
Yeah, I think the biggest hurdle, and it's a good problem to have. The biggest hurdle we have is the need to stay focused with limited resources. Meaning, every time I'm in a conversation at a dinner party or sidelines of a soccer game, or talking to a potential investor, everybody has an idea about how we could have a marketplace for jugglers in the circus, or lion tamers or bull riders or whatever else. There's no shortage of ideas, and probably a lot of them would be lucrative. Not necessarily the circus one, but a lot of the ones that people approach us with would be lucrative for us. We're a lot more consumed with healthcare and in the areas where we can genuinely make a difference and land there and expand and do better and better there. And then if there are things in 2 or 3 or 5 years that make sense, we can certainly get into that, even if that's including physicians or, all sorts of different other healthcare providers that are not nurses. We are comfortable and confident that our technology, our team, and our algorithm will transfer very well to other markets. But our number one opportunity is always to be even more focused and even more deliberate and disciplined about what we need to accomplish today, tomorrow, and over the next 30, 60, 90 days.
Yeah, let's explore this for a moment, Shane, because I'm kind of curious about this. You're already, you have relationships with a lot of these facilities that, they need the nurses, and you're providing those. And a lot of them, as you just mentioned, they need physicians too. Like, how do you sort of think about that? Because, with the entrepreneurial brain that guys like us have, you want to go after those opportunities, right? That's kind of feels like low-hanging fruit. At the same time, you've been through this enough to know the value in being hyper-focused, especially, at the young stage that you guys are at. So kind of walk us through like how you wrap your head around balancing those two things.
Well, I think the complexity of different marketplaces is something to keep in mind. So I don't know if a brain surgeon or a neurosurgeon would be applicable to something like this, but there are a lot of physicians that moonlight by themselves. I have one of my best friends from high school who's an ER doc, and if he wants to pick up another shift, it's not the most professional process. There's a Facebook page for Chicagoland emergency room doctors. They're almost openly negotiating. These are highly educated, professional, credentialed physicians, and they're basically negotiating in front of their neighbors. And so we know that all these things, there's a need, but with a small team, with limited resources for now, it's very important that we're focused. And the reason why it's important is not just resource allocation and proving, it's credibility. I personally wouldn't want somebody to approach me if I was the president of a hospital or CEO of a hospital or nursing director. I wouldn't want somebody to approach me and say, hey, behind door number one, I can offer you this whole team of people. Behind door number two, and oh, by the way, I have parking lot attendants, and I have housekeeping, and I have people that are going to work on weekends to help traffic in and out.
And I got jugglers and jesters, and
we got it all. But I wouldn't want to be approached that way. I'd like to know somebody is passionate about what I'm passionate about. So if I'm a chief nursing officer, I don't want to talk about an ER doc. I want to talk about getting the second shift tomorrow filled.
No, it makes a lot of sense. They want to see that you're focused. It's certainly helpful for you guys at this young stage. And you see a lot more value in going into new geographical markets first, really establishing yourself, establishing the brand name. And then you can look 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road at maybe adding on some of those other positions if it makes sense.
That's the fun part. The fun part is we have a very big challenge and puzzle to crack now, but there are a lot of puzzles that are waiting to be solved. And I think the speed and the team and the technological progress that we've made, I think we're going to be able to help a lot of different puzzles.
Shane, what's a serious challenge that you've had to overcome in your business or personal life? What was it? How'd you get through it? What did you learn?
Yeah, this is pretty near and dear. Is I've always tried to be as transparent as possible and have very genuine and real relationships. And that served me well for a long time. I certainly wasn't somebody who was running into the office, quote unquote, on Monday and telling everybody about my weekend. But I genuinely value people, and I want to be valued by people. I've been in a couple scenarios, including, fairly recently, not with NurseIO, but previous to NurseIO, where everything was, from a board perspective, everything was a spreadsheet rather than the depth of somebody's character or the intangibles of leadership that, don't show up on a balance sheet, but are trending in the right direction. Meaning, a venture capital community, and I've worked with a lot of really good venture capital investors, I really have, that are genuinely vested in the company financially. They care, they want to make introductions, they want to help to pressure test strategies and all sorts of other stuff. But there's also, that 10% of venture capital investors that, even though they've never worked in a company, they have a great MBA, they have great analytical skills, they're brilliant people. They think they know everything about operating a company, and they're in a tough position too, right? Like they have to report back to their investors and their GPs and their limited partners and everything else. But the board interactions that I thrive under and the venture capital relationships that I truly treasure to this day over several different stops are those that trust the operators. There's, if you put it together and you get buy-in for a strategy, healthcare is not the fastest moving business. It's really not. You're having to change consensus of all the neurosurgeons in the country or the FDA or, CMS for payment for a device. All these things take time. And so you can't default to, hey, you told us on last Wednesday that you were incorporating a new go-to-market strategy. it's now Friday afternoon. How come we haven't seen any uptick yet? Things take time, and you have to really know the business really well. You have to be secure in your knowledge, and you have to be very trusting of operators. That doesn't mean you should sit on your hands and let the operating team do whatever they want. You have a vested interest. It's very important for you and your reputation and your fund that you're doing things properly. But if you're relying on a low trust environment and, almost micromanagement, you're never going to capitalize on the true potential of an organization that genuinely believes in the leader in place. So I went through that in the last couple of years. And like I led off with, I'm a genuine people and I like genuine relationships. And I was put in a position where there were things going on behind the scenes, potentially from a board level that were not appreciating the blood, sweat, and tears that I was doing day to day. And I just wish that there was more candor, there was more transparency, there was more honor to the agreements that were set forth when I was joining the company. But those are things, I don't blame anybody. It's not the way I would have conducted things, but they have to do what's best for their investment. It's just some of the stylistic things that I wish were handled a little bit differently, knowing that there's some presidents or CEOs that no matter what you say to them, it's not going to impact them any way, shape, or form. They have a big ego potentially, or really, really, really thick skin. I think the people in this day and age, especially, they respond to people that are real people that are in a chair that's, perceived as higher up on the food chain, meaning, ultimately an investor has every right to remove an executive. But I think that sets organizations back. And so, but I had to go through, I was a casualty of that. I ended up leaving on my own terms, but I was a casualty of that. And that hurt in a big way. It didn't change who I thought I was as a person or anything existential, but it was, wow, I just spent so many years dedicating every free moment and ounce of thought and emotion to this venture that you can't marry yourself to a company, right? You marry yourself to a spouse, you marry yourself to raising children or dogs or whatever else that are, you're blessed with, but you can't put your self-worth or your confidence in the hands of anybody in a corporate realm, because it is what it is. It's people that are hopefully doing what they think is best, but don't exactly understand the entire picture.
It sounds like you found yourself in an environment where the culture of the leadership did not align with you and your values. And like, good on you for, taking a step back from that. And I applaud sort of that mindset of, you can't allow that to sort of define your value, your worth, who you are. But let's be honest, Shane, that's easier said than done, right? Like, you would put so much of your blood, sweat, and tears into that. That's a tough transition to make, where it's like, man, I have been busting my rear end here and I'm not getting appreciated. And now I'm in a position where I've just got to step away from this. Like, yeah. Did you really not have sort of that existential crisis, even to some degree?
No, I'm fortunate enough that I was born with a lot of confidence, and my parents will attest to that. So will my older siblings, because I was always heckling them. But I was born with a lot of confidence. I've accomplished a lot, and I feel good about what I've accomplished. And I've an amazing amount of belief in my faith and in my family and closest relationships. So I think the foundation is was really set. Some of it I was born with, some of it I was blessed with, some of it has just built over time. And so truly no existential threat, but it definitely punches you in the gut a little bit of, wow, that's how it went down. Wow. That person, there's this adage that you see a lot on social media now of like having somebody in the room when you're not in the room that thinks as highly of you as, when they're sitting in front of you type stuff. I'm butchering the meme, but in effect, finding out afterwards, the people in the room, there were some that were very supportive, and there were some that were very supportive when I was sitting in front of them for lunch or dinner or a meeting, but that were the exact opposite behind closed doors. That's the part where if you're serious about relationships and you want to be a genuine person and you want to be, trusting, those are the things that make you scratch your head like, wait a minute.
It's hard to understand that lack of authenticity when that's not the way that you're wired.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So what it did is back to the priority list of the 5 things for the next venture. And
I was going to say, it opened up you to sort of reevaluate things.
It reevaluated my priorities. Probably 10 years ago, it would have been title, compensation, really flashy technology. Now, those things are number 5. The location, the people, the board, the founders, all those things are very, very important to me. And I'm thankful now for that last experience, because I wouldn't have been able to distill down to my true north now without some of those hiccups or punches in the guts or whatever else in that last chapter. I wouldn't be what I'm doing today.
You wouldn't understand what it is that you wouldn't have had sort of that compare contrast to say like, that is something I do not care for. That is not me, unless that had been sort of thrust upon you.
Exactly. And I was asked to join a board myself for the first time in terms of a corporate board. I've been on nonprofit boards and other things, but corporately, it's given me a whole different perspective on asking questions and empowering an operating leader rather than second guessing, gossiping, poking, micromanaging. It's like, hey, you've probably already thought about this, but if you haven't, maybe, could we talk about X, Y, and Z? That's a lot different than, you really need to do this. It's like, yeah, we did that 6 months ago and it didn't work. You have to give people some trust and some benefit of the doubt.
Shane, how would you describe your superpower?
Oh, I don't know if I have a superpower. I think I've been fortunate enough to be surrounded by really strong mentors, to be raised in a really phenomenal family, to have a wife that has been really, really good for me, to have a faith that drives everything that I do. I don't personally have a superpower, but I'm very appreciative of the people that have, helped to form me along the way, whether that was a sports coach or a teacher or my parents or my older siblings or, somebody in the community that took an interest into my smile and what I was trying to do and helped to corral me into a different way. So my superpower is probably appreciation. Like I genuinely appreciate people that go out of their way to make an introduction for me, or I know on the side that they are in that room, the proverbial back room, and they're saying, yeah, I met with him yesterday. He's what he says he is, rather than, oh yeah, you're great. And then get the dagger ready behind the scenes.
I love that answer. Your superpower is appreciation, but let me push a little bit, because you've had a lot of success. You've alluded to that. We've talked, we've touched just on a handful of things that you've done. Are you a good salesman? Are you good at sort of seeing the chessboard in a different way than other people are? Are you good at sort of identifying talent and spotting, oh, that person should be here, kind of a thing? Like, let's set humility aside a little bit. I can tell it's a little uncomfortable for you.
It's uncomfortable. I don't like interviewing. I'm not talking about like a podcast interview. I don't like interviewing for a job, because then I have to talk about myself. So I think that and then this isn't self-depreciating. I think I'm pretty simple-minded, meaning I've been involved in all these really complicated fields, electrophysiology. Like, you're talking to a physician that has a catheter in somebody's heart, and they're putting energy to interrupt a bad arrhythmia. They're looking at a 64 lead EKG, and they're able in real time with a heat source in their hands in somebody's heart to say, oh, in lead 13 in the third segment, I know if I ablate where that's coming from, I'm going to help this person get out of atrial fibrillation or SVT. That's really complicated. I don't think I could do that, no matter how much education I had. It's just a processing speed that's very, very fast. But what I'm able to do is to build trust quickly and to distill really complicated things into very simple distilled messages. Meaning, like, when I was in that role in electrophysiology, I could travel the world and talk to any electrophysiologist that I wanted to. It wasn't to go toe to toe on the 13th lead and the fourth segment of that patient, but it was to ask the right questions, to build trust, to, plant a couple seeds for them to think about that ultimately help the organization refine the product roadmap or to pick up business or whatever. But I think I'm pretty good at communicating, and I'm pretty good at distilling complicated things into more distilled messages. And I think the relationships have served me well. I think that personally, professionally, a appetite for relationship, but also, being able to build trust quickly has benefited me in all realms of my life.
I tell you what, I've had the pleasure of working with some folks that, excuse me, are really good at sort of taking complicated topics and being able to break them down into, bullet points that are distilled and like easy to wrap your head around. And it's one thing to sort of like just talk about it on the surface here, but when you sort of see it in play, it's such an easier way to get folks on board with the mission and moving forward.
Yep.
Whether it's your team members, whether you're trying to present, a new idea to your clients, whether you're trying to get, providers on board, when you can think of that language that makes this complex idea really easy to distill down and digest, it's pretty powerful.
They say the average American is bombarded with over 5,000 promotional messages a day. And that could be everything, right? That could be on TikTok. That could be on a billboard. That could be in the midst, a commercial in the midst of a podcast. It could be a lot of different things. So try to fast forward to that of a really talented clinician who has a full docket of surgeries on that day or patients on that day or budgets to pour through on that day. They're getting bombarded like everybody else in the country is getting bombarded. And they also have a really complicated, important, beneficial, or, vital job to do. So I think the old adage with marketing, I'm sure you know these same things, is like 7 different ways to 7 different times for a message to resonate with somebody. I think it's even more appropriate now. That making things easy for people to digest. If they want to dive deeper, then be prepared to dive as deep as anybody wants to peel that onion. But in the meantime, make it very basic. Like people reach out blindly on LinkedIn now, like nonstop. And it's like, I don't need a manufacturing solution. I'm not manufacturing anything. I don't need a workforce solution for 18 countries. I'm in one state of one country. It's like if people just did a little bit of homework, it would go a lot better, because otherwise you're just doing blind outreaches and hoping that if you have a broad net, it's going to yield something back to you. How about spending more time and making a very narrow approach plan and knowing a little bit about somebody you're reaching out to, so people are actually not gun shy about going into LinkedIn to go to their mailbox, because they know it's going to be 750 people in 24 hours that have nothing to do with the business that you're running.
Well, I think that we sort of shifted the message there a little bit, but I think it's a really powerful one for, folks to absorb, especially folks who are in kind of the sales and marketing side of things. Because I hear this a lot from people. They're like, yeah, I'm tired of getting bombarded with the things that hit my inbox all the time are, you need merchant cash advances. No, never have. Never been in the position for that. Like do a little homework. And so, and I think there is sort of this mentality out there that, hey, let's just take a shotgun to the wall. Yeah. I'm going to hit 999 people that are not a fit for this, but maybe I'll get one. And if you were to take the time to do a little bit of research, get to know somebody a little bit before you reach out, you've got a much more tailored message. You can offer something of true value to them. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. So I'm glad we sort of took that little tangent there.
Are you trying to politely say that I went off slope?
I think it's great. I mean, that's the beauty of these conversations. We're not locked into a specific structure. It's just, I told you before we went live, like I'm going to ask some questions and I don't know where it's going to go. So you and I will just roll with it. So I think that was great.
Yep. Thank you.
One thing I'm curious to hear, somebody who's had the kind of success that you've had, Shane, are there particular things that help to keep you on schedule, on target, centered, help you start your day, different habits, routines that are really instructive and helpful for you?
Yeah, I think up until a couple of years ago, I was one of those obnoxious people who didn't need to sleep very much. Like I'd literally be, the last person at a function and then the first person in the gym the next morning with like 4 or 5 hours in between. I think the routines are important to me, and I'm not, as young as I was several years ago, that it's very important for me first thing in the morning, and it's still really early. It's 4:30, it's 5, it's 5:30, but it's still of some sort of reflection, whether that's a formal Bible study or a just a quiet time to reflect a little bit and to pray or to just be quiet and silent and have peace. That's kind of why I've told my family forever, like, why do you get up so early? It's because that's time that I don't have to feel guilty about anything. Like, I'm not taking away from the family. Everybody else is asleep. I'm not taking away from my job. I'm not taking away from an organization that I'm working for. I'm taking, if you look at debits and credits, I'm debiting out of my own, bank to wake up at 4:30, where a lot of people are waking up at 6:30, meaning like I can do whatever I want with that time. And so I didn't start out as a, out of college as like a real early bird, wake up with the roosters type of person, but I definitely am now. And because it allows me that devotional time, that Bible study, that prayer time, that quiet time. And then most days of the week, whether it's 5 or 6, sometimes 7, is some form of exercise, whether that is a good lift or a good hike or, kind of a run walk or a quick jog, whatever that is, that helps me a tremendous amount. And then now, like even when I was that obnoxious person that, got 4 hours of sleep a night, I never drank coffee. Like I had never had. A couple years ago, I was like, hey, I like coffee, ice cream. I like the smell of it. I'm tired of going to coffee meetings and having hot chocolate like a little kid or having a bottle of water for the 10th time in the day. That I really enjoy coffee now. My wife makes a great French press, and we have a couple minutes after I come home from the gym before I jump into my schedule where we have coffee together, and it's a nice French press, and we're sitting outside in Arizona, and it's a nice way for us to be connected as well. So those routines, back to answer your question directly, routines help me to stay, very grounded. I noticed, like when we go on vacation or we were at a family reunion last week, I almost can sense myself getting away. Like, obviously you're not able to do all those things if you're running around with the family, on vacation or with your in-laws or whatever else, and you're trying to do a lot of different things in the course of a day. But I can feel the difference in myself. I can feel myself getting impatient. I can feel myself not thinking as clearly. I can feel myself, not the best version of myself. Mm-hmm. When I'm grounded in my routines and my foundations, especially in the morning, I'm good to go. That's
Shane Brown time. You get up, you have time for exercising, personal reflection, the prayer. It sounds like then you sort of ease your way into like social interaction. The coffee with your wife sounds like a nice way to kind of ease into that. That's beautiful.
Yep.
Just one more question for you, Shane. But before I ask it, I want to do 2 things. First of all, everyone listening, I want to ask you to pause just for a second. Go to your favorite podcast app, hit that follow button. I want you to continue to get more great interviews like we've had today with Shane Brown from NurseIO. Shane, I also want to let people know the best way to either get in touch with you directly, to follow your story, or that of NurseIO. What would that be?
Yeah, Shane at NurseIO.com is my email address. I don't hide behind it. I actually love hearing from people.
And take a moment and just tailor your message to him, whatever it is. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Don't just say, hey, we want to sell you, 50 acres in London. Like that's not the business I'm in. So don't send me that email. But LinkedIn, I think, is, no matter, I was critical of the bombardment of the inbox, but I think the companies that care and the people that have been experienced in different realms, it's still a really good forum for idea sharing and everything else. On Twitter/X, there's a NurseIO, follow there. There's Facebook pages, but I think the best way is probably LinkedIn, or to email me directly, or to be on X. And
great.
Whether you're a facility or a clinician, or you're just really interested on where staffing is going in the future, I'd love to be in touch.
And we'll try to include links to all those things you just mentioned in the show notes for folks. So last question for you, Shane. You and I reconnect a year from now, and you're really excited. You are celebrating some big thing. What's that big thing you're celebrating a year from now?
Yeah, I think the launch into the 10 more markets is going to be fun. We're going to learn a lot. Hopefully we do more beneficial execution than distracting beneficial, but either way, we'll learn a lot. The launch of our brand new software program is going to be more details to follow, but it's going to take the industry by storm.
What are we talking about here? What can you say at this point?
Well, we're talking about a company that was built on an app that now will have a comprehensive suite on staff optimization tools. So we will no longer be a one-trick pony. We will now be in a place to help people schedule, to help people credential, to help people to analyze their spend, to find, the best and the brightest. All of those things are going to be in our new suite. And we're about to sign an agreement in the next couple of weeks that goes from a soft launch of our new software to prime time in a few weeks' time. So when
this out right now? You said the soft launch hasn't happened yet.
Soft launch is happening, but just kind of really tight circle.
Okay.
Just to make sure that we think it's as good as we are. And the reviews are better than imagined. And we're going from a very competitive marketplace, because there's several companies that do what we do in terms of matchmaking and connecting clinicians with healthcare facilities, to truly helping hospitals and assisted living and all these facilities to staff better, to manage their spend, to appreciate their employees better, to genuinely help out in a lot bigger way. And oh, by the way, the app is still a tool, but it will be a part of a suite of tools rather than just one tool.
My goodness, I feel like we buried the lead here, Shane. Like that sounds pretty amazing. We're going to have you back on when that's been out in the market, and we can talk about that a little bit more. Because
that sounds good.
Yeah, excited about that. Well, Shane Brown from NurseIO, I want to be the first to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I had fun, Anthony. Appreciate the forum, and it was really nice getting to know you.
Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.